There's a lot to get to. I guess I'll start with maybe the Oregon series and what the future of that might be now that you moved to this, and if you've had any discussions with them about how to move forward with those two games.
Yeah, I've talked to all three of our non-conference opponent athletic directors, including Oregon, of course, and we've agreed to talk in the future, to see if we can try and reschedule our contests.
Would that mean that you're not going to play next year? Is it too soon to know whether the Oregon game I'm talking about? Is it too soon to know an answer on that?
Yes, I'm sorry, Bill. It's too early to know that. We didn't get into details, so he and I will probably chat next week. So, I called the three athletic directors today, and Mark at Buffalo, and Bob at Bowling Green, and Rob at Oregon, and shared with them what our announcement would be. They're all going through similar conversations in their league, so they were totally understanding. But I shared with them that I would call next week and see if we could try and reschedule. So Rob and I at Oregon did not get into any details. Sorry, Bill.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay, again, folks, hit *6 to unmute yourself. Next up, Nathan Baird with Cleveland.com and Dan Hope on deck. Nathan?
Thanks, Gene. Can you tell us a little bit about where the athletic budget stands right now and what cuts you may have had to make? And I guess if the Bowling Green and Buffalo payouts, if those are not on the books for this next fiscal year, does that give you any further easing on cuts you might have to make for this next fiscal year?
So we've already made some adjustments in our budget, and we're working off of a 2-month budget that was just like the rest of the university, that was approved by the trustees. And so we have been pretty fluid with this. And as we get more understanding of what our future looks like relative to all of our events, we'll be more definitive with our budget. But at this point in time, Nathan, we haven't made final decisions. And relative to the payouts, again, I'll talk to them next week, and we'll determine what we have to do or not do. So I can't get into that at this point in time.
Next up, Dan Hope from 11 Warriors with Bill Rabinowitz on deck. Dan?
Hey, Gene, you guys obviously made the decision yesterday to shut down voluntary workouts for the time being. Now you're making this move. Just what's your level of optimism or concern right now about Ohio State actually being able to proceed forward with playing fall sports?
Well, I'm really concerned. That's a great question. That is the question of the day. I am very concerned. I think in our last conversation, whatever that was, I was, cautiously optimistic. I'm not even there now. And when you look at the behavior of our country, and you consider that in May, we were on a downward trajectory with cases, and our hospitals were creating opportunities for people to come back and get the care that they needed beyond COVID, and elective surgeries and things of that nature. And now we're, if not the worst in the world, one of the worst in the world. And Franklin County is at a level 3, on a trajectory towards level 4. So I am concerned that we may not be able to play, which is why we took the measure that we took in order to try and have September available to us for conference games, and give us the flexibility and control to handle disruptions if we're able to start a season. So I'm concerned about where we are, just across the board relative to the management of the pandemic as individuals. I think our governor has done a phenomenal job. He had us on a great trajectory downward, and as we just didn't respond to our opportunities that were provided to us. And so, it's people need to follow the protocols and give our kids a chance to compete.
What do you feel like has to happen over the next 2 months to get to a point where football games and other fall sports can be played?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're going to follow the lead of our medical experts. Their advice has been great for us as we've moved through this process, and the health and safety of our student athletes is first and foremost. And so we're going to continue to follow their lead. Obviously, we need the virus to be managed differently than it is now, because we're at a spike again. So we need that. And so at this point in time, we'll wait and see and take the advice of our medical experts from the Big Ten Medical Task Force. And then also, obviously, we're blessed with great medical advice here locally, as are the other schools. 13 of our 14 schools have medical centers. So we have access to tremendous advice. So we'll just have to wait and see how our different environments manage the pandemic and take their advice as we move forward.
Thanks, Gene.
Next up, Bill Rabinowitz with the Columbus Dispatch with Ari Wasserman on deck. Bill?
Bill must be Muirfield. Bill, are you at Muirfield on the 18th green?
I think he is. We'll go ahead. We'll move on to Ari Wasserman from The Athletic with Heather Dinich on deck. Ari?
Hey, Gene, in order to play a season this year, does there have to be an acceptance for people at your level that this virus is going to spread at least some, and to have the ability to endure that? Or what's the expectation of how this is managed from a team level for this to be manageable for a season to happen? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't know if Ari, I could really answer that one because we're still learning as we go along. And, we haven't, begun to engage in, true practice. And so those protocols are being developed by our Big Ten Task Force for Emerging Infectious Diseases, and then our Sports Medicine Group. And we'll probably have some guidance from the NCAA committee on medical safeguards. So we don't have that information yet, but we will get that. I think we all know that July 24th is when we can actually start that based upon the current schedule. So we just have to wait and see and determine if we can actually hold practice and ultimately contest the way we need to protect the kids. And there's probably, to your point, going to have to be some level of acceptance, but how do you mitigate that? Don't know. That's where we got to rely on the experts.
Thank you for doing this, Gene.
No problem, Ari. Let me, Jerry, while Ari just reminded me, let me apologize to everybody that texted me or called me and I wasn't able to respond. I think you guys know that's hard for me not to respond, and I just wanted to hold true to our commitment to my colleagues in the league and my commissioner, and just wanted to hold true to that until I had this opportunity right here. So I apologize that I wasn't responsive to all of you like I would want to be. So sorry.
Thank you, Gene. Well, we're going to go back to Bill Rabinowitz. The drone is gone at Muirfield. So Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch with Heather Dinich on deck. Bill?
Bill's putting on 18, I guarantee you. He's trying to hit it high and have the ball roll back.
Goodness gracious. Okay, Heather Dinich from ESPN.com. You available, Heather?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Gene?
Yeah, I got you, Heather.
Okay. How much consideration is being given to front-loading the schedule with division games, and when you guys might determine a decision on that, and how you determine a champion? Would you do just winning percentage? What are the discussions around all those things?
We haven't gotten into that level of detail, Heather. We have created that list, so that is a talking point that we have to have as coaches. Is whatever number of games, how many do we have, and then do we front load division or do we spread it out? We got to go through all that and talk about a championship. We have not delved deep into those details yet. We've had preliminary conversations, but we haven't gone there to the point where I could actually definitively answer that question.
I was just curious.
No, go ahead.
Next
week we're doing that.
You said next week they're doing that?
Yeah. I anticipate next week we'll get into the details of how our schedules will work.
I was also curious as to is there anything that you can share as far as the timing of doing this now collectively as a league?
Yeah, we came to it was kind of interesting. We kind of talked about a number of different things over time. Keep in mind, since we've all been shut down, we've been fortunate to have the leadership that we have, and we've been having conference calls as athletic directors from the time we left the tournament in Chicago in basketball. First, we started out 7 days a week, and then we went into 5 days a week, and we've been doing that. And a lot of our discussions, obviously, early on was about, the virus and what we could do in the summertime, the NCAA rules and things of that nature, spring sports. But we finally got to a point where we could start talking about, realistically, can we have a football season? And we talked about different scenarios and that everybody else is talking about. And it kind of came naturally as we talked about our planning principles, health and safety of our student athletes, first and foremost, flexibility and control. We with our conference games being able to move up into September allows us the ability to create flexibility and handle disruptions. Aligning with our academic calendars, we had to wait and find out what are our schools and the leagues going to do. Are they going to have in-person classes, or are they going to have a hybrid program? When are they going to start? When are they going to end? And we're aligned mostly with the academic calendars, where a lot of our schools are shutting down in person prior to Thanksgiving. And as you know, we typically have a home game or away game right after Thanksgiving. So now we have the ability to say to ourselves, we got September 5th available. We got it available. So now we can say to ourselves, okay, how do we want to play? So it kind of came naturally, Heather, as we talked about different scenarios. And we just felt that by playing our conference games, have September available to us, gave us flexibility, control. We can be nimble. We can adjust. So that's how it came to us.
Thank you.
Next up, Austin Ward from Lettermen Row with Joey Kaufman on deck. Austin? Star 6. Austin, are you there? What about you, Joey Kaufman? Are you available? Good.
Jerry, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Great. Gene, could you maybe explain a little more on how the conference came to a decision that playing only conference games will be significantly safer or just safer in general than playing non-conference games? Like, what are some of the things that would make it safer?
Well, I don't know if it would make it, I trust that our colleagues that we would compete against in the non-conference would have safety and the health of their student athletes at the top of their priority list, just like we are. I think from the main thing for us from a health and safety point of view was we do know that we are familiar with the hotels. We're familiar with the visiting team locker rooms. We're familiar with operations and all those type of things, so we can put in place standardized protocols that we all adhere to. But that could be true for our non-conference opponents as well. So it's not like the major issue around that. Biggest thing for us was just the opportunity to have September and create the flexibility. And if we're able to play in September and something occurs in late September or early October, we can pause. We can hit the pause button and provide a window of opportunity for our student athletes to not be put at risk. We can move games. If for a particular environment, if we're scheduled to play somewhere else and an outbreak occurs in that environment, we can, that school has to shut down, and we can change games. And so there's the flexibility. I can't say that enough. Is significant, and to your point around health and safety, it just gives us that ability to say, it's not safe here in Franklin County, so Illinois can't come here. So what does that mean? We'll have the ability to address that.
Next up, we're going to go back to Austin Ward from Lettermen Row with Lane Higgins on deck. Austin?
Sorry about that, Gene.
No problem, Austin. I thought you were having a beer somewhere at your field. That's all right.
Maybe when we're done here. When you talk about this flexibility and the chances that stuff could move to September or later, I know that there's no definitive schedule that you could put out or that everyone could agree on right now. If you guys sit down next week and have to come up with a proposal, what do you think is realistic in terms of number and trying to decide which opponents you could play? Because I don't think you can just make it up week by week once you get to September, right?
Well, no, we'll probably look at what we currently have scheduled and consider those contests and whether or not we could retain those. Obviously, the dates would change. And then we, would have to determine some principles around the earlier question about East versus West divisions and how we want to structure that. But we have a scheduler in the Big Ten, and we'll talk about our planning principles and we'll schedule games. And obviously, in this situation, from a competitive equity point of view, everybody won't be happy. But the reality is you get a chance to compete and allow your kids a chance to play. So we have to set aside to some degree competitive equity. So I don't see a challenge with scheduling the games. We have to determine how many. We have to determine the divisional issues like was raised earlier and how we want to deal with that. We have to determine how many games we want to pre-schedule. It may be that we don't pre-schedule X. We only pre-schedule X number of games and hold others in abeyance, because we just have to understand that the virus is going to exist. And so we got to. That's the beauty of having September 5th available, or week 0 is available now that the NCAA has approved that. So all those things give us the ability to, I think, to schedule games, and we'll just have to figure out what our planning principles are.
And the other concern that you had raised back in May when you talked about this being a possibility was trying to get every league to agree on the amount of games and how that would impact playoff, requirements and making that field. Are those conversations going on simultaneously, or is this just step one?
Step one, and that's no longer a concern of mine. and I've shifted my priorities of concerns, and as I've learned more about the virus, I've shifted my priority of concerns as it relates to what other leagues are doing in postseason, to be quite frank. I just want to give our kids a chance to play. And you guys know this, and it's all the fall sports. We have a number of athletes who have an opportunity to have future careers or future opportunities in their sports post graduation or post this season, and I want to give them that chance. And so I'm more concerned about the regular season right now. And if we're blessed to have a postseason, whatever that looks like, great. But right now, I would love to have Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers and to have a chance to have a season. And so that was a concern of mine at the beginning, but it's no longer a concern. Regular season is my concern.
Great. Thanks for your time, Gene.
Next up is Lane Higgins from the Wall Street Journal with Tony Girdman on deck. Lane?
Hey there. I think I accidentally remuted myself just there. But thank you for making the time for this. And I guess the main question that I had after all of the ones that have already been asked is that given this NCAA defined 6-week period of kind of ramping up practices before the first game, is it likely then that we'll see games in week 0 or on September 5th, given that 6-week period is fast upon us, or should we expect that maybe we're not going to see some conference games until later in September?
Well, that's a great question. That's the thing. That's another issue we'll have to talk about when we get into this. You hit on it. The flexibility of starting week 0, week 1, or week 2, based upon whatever the virus does. But we have to make that decision in a timely fashion because we would have to push back that 6-week window. So to your point, great question. If we decided that we're going to start September 12th or whatever that third week is, third week, 0, 1, 2, we would have to push back our 6-week window. And so, or ask for relief. That's one of the things that the Football Oversight Committee has done and the NCAA Council has done. They've been very flexible in understanding these tough decisions and the fluidity of these decisions. And so I would think if we needed some help there, we would get it. But yeah, you hit on the question. That's a very good question.
Thank you. And thanks for making the time.
Next up, Tony Girdman, now representing Buckeye Scoop with Rob Aller on deck. Tony?
Hey, Gene, there's been speculation about 10 conference games, and I know you haven't gotten into all of that yet. Would you be in favor of trying to have 10 conference games this year?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we've talked about that, and that's a possibility. And, I'm hopeful that that's where we end up next week and locking that down. We've talked about that. That's our preference. But yeah, that would be a good scenario of pre-scheduling. So we'll just have to wait and see.
And then when, in terms of a date, should we expect the conference schedule to be set, even if it's just pre-scheduling, 6 games or whatever?
Yeah, I don't have that crystal ball. That's a good one. I don't. You got 14 institutions, so I would hope we could do it tomorrow, but that's not realistic. So I can't give you a date. I'm sorry.
Like 2 weeks, 1 week, ballpark?
I wouldn't make that speculation. I really couldn't.
All right, thanks.
It would have to be fast, not because of really what Lane said, that great question that she asked. Because we have to take into consideration July, I think it's 24th. We have to take into consideration team organized activities and whether we push that back or not. So, I'm hopeful soon.
Next up, Rob Aller from the Dispatch with Tim May on deck. Rob?
Gene, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you, Rob. Thank you.
Okay. By the way, I'm at Muirfield, and Bill missed the putt. In fact, he missed it twice. Hey,
I'm
question.
sure you did, but
oh no, I hit the 30-footer. Fans in the stadium, where do we stand on that? That hasn't been discussed yet, and I don't know. You know, maybe that's back burner, although I doubt it. Where do you stand, and what's the deadline for that?
yeah, that has a little bit more time, a little bit more flexibility than the schedule issue. But I'm based upon where we are, Rob. I mean, I think we're going to end up with the CDC requirements of 6 feet. So that takes our stadium capacity down significantly, and we'll begin to work on that. That hasn't been a priority at this point in time, but we'll get to that, and we'll take the advice of our medical people. But when you just watch the behavior and you watch the fact that we're spiking, and you watch our governors fighting to help us help ourselves, and we're not in a good place. And so I would have a hard time I have a hard time doing something different than the CDC guidelines. And if we're able to have fans in the stand, because that's a real possibility. 2 months ago, I was optimistic and cautiously optimistic, but I've lost that. So to me, if we have fans in the stands, it will be CDC guidelines, and we just have to figure out what those numbers are. But a lot less than what I thought.
When you say, because I think you mentioned originally 20 and then said maybe up to 50, which of those that you thought? You think it's closer to 20, maybe 10?
Yeah, it's closer in that area. I need to wait for my ticket manager to do his work, but certainly in that area.
Okay, a couple other things. I know that at one time spring football.
I want to reiterate that. If we have fans in the stands, I mean, I want everybody to be realistic here, because that's a real concern.
Okay, another thing. At one point, spring football.
Hey, Rob, it's got to be quick, Rob, please.
All right, spring football. Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. Where are you on having a spring football season instead?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that in great detail. We decided to leave that on the table. Our focus, Rob, was to get onto the fall, focus on the fall. And obviously, if things don't happen for the fall, then we need to think about the spring. But right now, that's not a high priority for us.
Thanks.
Next up for a couple quickies, Tim May from Lettermen Row with Bill Rabinowitz on deck. Tim?
Me?
Got you, Tim. Tim?
Jerry, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can, yes.
Okay. Gene, how much talk has there been with the networks, et cetera? How flexible have they been about this, et cetera? And what are sort of y'all's obligations as far as like the contracts go with them?
Yep. Kevin Warren, our commissioner, has been having ongoing conversations with our partners, and I really can't address that, Tim. That'd be a great question for him, but he's been having conversations with them.
And the other thing is, do you get the idea that July 24th is going to get pushed back just from the people you're talking to, NCAA, your colleagues in the Big Ten, et cetera? What is your sense of July 24th actually being that date when y'all can kind of get things going?
It's so weird because you literally have to go day by day, week by week. So, we got to see where things go next week across the country and locally. And then we have to make a decision on, what week we're going to start relative to contests. And so there's a couple of variables in there, but it's too difficult for me to speculate at this point in time, Tim.
In my last quickie, is the idea of being flexible with games, maybe even have to postpone or cancel games.
Are y'all going to come to consensus of what are the parameters that would force that to happen? Like, for example, you could have 4 cases of COVID on your team suddenly, but if all 4 of them are your quarterbacks, you know what I mean? I mean, are y'all going to discuss what would constitute, or have y'all already discussed what would constitute the grounds for postponing a game?
Yeah, we know we have to do that, and we're going to delve into that. But no question, yeah, we'll have to create those parameters and a process by which the approval is made through the conference office.
Yes.
So yes, definitely.
Thanks, man.
All right, we've got time for one last question, and we're going to go back to out to Muirfield. Bill Rabinowitz with the Dispatch. Bill?
Oh, for the third time is a charm, Gene. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, Bill.
Okay. Obviously, this is a devastating hit financially for athletic programs in 2020. But how devastating is this going to be long term? I mean, this has been, in some ways, a golden era for college sports with a lot of spending. How different is the landscape going to be as a result of this?
Well, it's interesting. That's a great question, Bill. We have to do some work on our budget. We got a lot of work to do as we ultimately make some decisions. But, I think there's some new behaviors that are going to be in play here as we move forward. And it's kind of like what we're all experiencing now. We all have these new virtual tools that we're using and probably will continue to use as we move forward. But also relative to, just the management of expenditures for different things, I think will change across the country. There's different cost containment committees across the country that have emerged, and ideas will come out of that. And some of us old school guys have some ideas around how we should do things around NCAA championships differently, and have always had those ideas, and now we might have a chance to do that. So I think you're right, Bill. I think that when we're able to get to a point to objectively and reasonably look at those things, I think some of those changes will occur. Right now, it's very difficult to do because we're all kind of locked into the challenge of positioning ourselves to make leadership type decisions in the present. And so I think you're right, but it's very difficult to look down the road when you have COVID and social injustice issues and NIL looming. And so there's a number of things that we're just kind of drinking water through a fire hose at this point.
And you touched on this when asked earlier a little bit, but how much discussion has there been? We saw what Stanford did yesterday with cutting sports. How much do you want to resist that? Is that realistic that you can get away with not having to cut sports?
At this point in time, we're avoiding that.
Okay. What about pay cuts for coaches?
Same.
Great. Gene, thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little bit over. Again, appreciate your time so much. And
all right.
Media. Sorry, go ahead, Gene. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, no problem. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and understanding, and appreciate all your hard work, and stay safe, please.